Hi, my name is Katie Shea, and for my scenario, I have focused on the basics of baking, how to decorate and frost things, and more. During this video, I'm going to be talking about my experience making a Mother's Day cake, and throughout it, talking about mistakes I made before I got to this point and what I learned from them. I hope you enjoy. First off, you need to know the ingredients of any recipe before you begin. For this cake, I used Hershey's chocolate cake recipe, and to make this, you'll need sugar, all-purpose flour, cocoa powder, which doesn't matter if it's unsweetened or not, baking powder, baking soda, salt, eggs, milk, buttermilk, oil, which can be vegetable or canola oil. It doesn't matter from what I've seen. Vanilla extract, and finally boiling water. Here are all the brands that I used for this, but it doesn't really matter what you use. What is very important is that you have all-purpose flour instead of flour dedicated for making bread or something similar to that. You might also notice that I don't have buttermilk here, and that's because I used a substitution of normal milk and lemon juice. If you don't have all these ingredients either, but still want to make the cake, there are several websites that have good substitutions that I'll link in the description. So to begin, you'll want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees, and then you'll want to prep 2 cake pans for later and set them aside. After that, you want to mix in all your dry ingredients, which are sugar, flour, cocoa powder, baking soda, baking powder, and salt. It doesn't matter if you use a manual beater or an electric mixer, but once it's fully mixed, it should look like a light brown powder. Continuing on, you'll want to add your eggs, buttermilk, oil, and vanilla, but make sure you leave out the boiling water. Now, here it says to mix on medium speed for 2 minutes with a mixer, but again, it's okay to use a manual beater. You'll be able to know it's fully mixed when it looks smooth and there aren't any chunks visible. Finally, we add the boiling water, but when you do this, you want to make sure you're careful. When I did this my first time, I poured it in too fast and ended up burning myself. Still though, it's a good rule of thumb to pour things in kind of slowly so dust doesn't go everywhere or so you don't spill anything. And it's the same when it comes to mixing. Moving on though, after the water is mixed in, the batter should become extremely thin, almost water-like. Once it's like this, you can pour it into your cake pans, then throw them in the oven for 30 to 35 minutes. When it's done, it should have a slightly spongy feel and should push back a bit, which is the case for most cakes and cupcakes. Another way to test if it's fully baked is to put a toothpick in the center, and if it comes out dry, it's done. Sometimes, though, you might not even need to use a toothpick to know when it's not done. One time, this happened to me when I was making a vanilla and chocolate cake to practice frosting with a teacher, and the vanilla cakes were still mostly liquid in the pan after almost 45 minutes. I'm still not sure what went so wrong there, but from that, I definitely learned to make sure I'm precise with my ingredients. So, now we can move on to the next step when it comes to really any dessert, frosting. Make sure you have a lot of extra powdered sugar for this. I've never had much luck with frosting recipes, and have ended up with them being mostly liquid. However, if you add enough powdered sugar, it eventually gets to the right consistency with it ending up being rather sweet. I've had a lot of luck with this recipe though. To make it, you'll need butter, more cocoa powder, powdered sugar, normal milk, and vanilla extract. To begin, we only need to mix 2 things, the butter and the cocoa powder. But there's a specific way to do this that makes it turn out better from what I've tried. What you want to do is you want to mix the butter alone until it's slightly creamy, similar to this, and then mix in the cocoa powder. Knowing how to cream things together with butter like this is actually really helpful at times, since a lot of desserts tell you to do this, but never actually how to. After this, though, you just need to add everything else and mix again. If you find that the final mixture isn't to the consistency you want, just add more powdered sugar, like I said, and mix until you like it. One thing you really should do is that if you're using an electric mixer for frosting, use a spatula to scrape off the sides of the bowl and check under all the frosting, since sometimes ingredients get stuck on the sides of the bowl and don't get mixed in. Once it's all done, though, you can add food coloring if you like. I made mine pink since this cake would be for Mother's Day. So here's where the fun part begins, actually getting to build the cake. Your cakes should hopefully be cooled by now, and you want to get them both onto separate plates. It's okay if a little piece of one breaks off when you're taking them out of the pan, because you can just cover it up with frosting later, so make sure you save it. Before you begin though, other than having fully cooled cakes, you want to make sure you have room in your fridge. That way, if your cakes are at a slight of an angle, you can freeze them together before they slip, which is what I actually had to do when I was making this cake. Something that might help before you start frosting is if you cut out a piece of cardboard, put frosting on either side, and then put the cake on top of that. That way, the cake doesn't move at all when you're working on it. After that, what you need to do is the easiest step in my opinion. All you need to do is use a spatula to cover the top of the first layer of cake and frosting. It should be a little thick so the cakes stay together, but once it's on there, put the other cake on top and get another glob of frosting to put on the top of the second cake. After that, you want to get even more frosting to use on the sides of the cake. In order to get it as smooth as possible, you want to pick up the spatula as little times as possible. Once you have it all covered, though, you need to put it in your fridge. I usually let it sit for an hour or two, but it's up to you how long you want to leave it. As long as the crumb coat or the first layer of frosting is cold, you're good to move on. Once you get your cake out of your fridge, all you really need to do is repeat what you did for the crumb coat, but focusing more on making it as smooth as possible. What I like to do, since I'm not really the best at that part myself yet, is to try and end off my stroke with a sort of swoosh. It's at this point, though, where you can decide if you want to add a design on the top of your cake with frosting or not. Then after that, you just need to add whatever decorations you want. As I said before, I made this cake for Mother's Day, so I tried to make my decorations purple and write Happy Mother's Day on it. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough room, so I couldn't add the S on Mother's. Either way, though, I think this has been one of the best cakes I've made yet. So I hope you enjoyed this video about how I learned to bake a cake. Hopefully you learned something new about baking or took in some new tips. All my sources for my research and pictures will be in the description, and if you have any questions, let me know in the comments. Have a great day.